This is from the National Fibromyalgia Association, and it really appeared to be a good one-stop shopping for information because this is the type of stuff that's repeated all over the place, all over the internet. Um, and this is addressing the causes of fibromyalgia. And, I want to go over this. So, what does that mean to you as a patient? Um, the first thing they uh, are stating here is most researchers agree that fibromyalgia is a disorder of central processing with neuroendocrine neurotransmitter dysregulation. Well, what does that mean? Is there any labs you could take? Is there anything they're measuring that is getting to the bottom of fibromyalgia? What can you do about it? Okay, the first thing they mention is substance P in the spinal cord. Well, I did some homework on that, and they do spinal taps for that. And nobody that I know of with fibromyalgia is getting a spinal tap for a diagnostic criteria. And also, what does that mean to have high substance P? And on that, on the next video, I followed the trail of breadcrumbs in regard to that and found a really very, very interesting medical study that did include that. And there's three other things that sound like it could be measurable in the labs, and that's low levels of serotonin and tryptophan and abnormalities in cytokine function. And I'll pause right here and go over those as potential labs. I'll begin with tryptophan, serotonin, and cytokines. And it almost reads like it could be a diagnostic criteria, so I looked into it a little bit. I checked with LabCorp and Mayo Clinic labs, and neither test for tryptophan. Both labs test for serotonin. It's done specifically to test for certain cancers and heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. This is a drug that can reduce platelets, causing someone to bleed too much. It's tested in men's multiple endocrine neoplasm syndrome, and that's an inherited condition. And I thought I might find it for serotonin syndrome, but it is not. Cytokines is a 12-part panel. LabCorp only does it for research, and Mayo Clinic Labs does it for research and for patient care. And next I'll look into cytokines. But at this point, this is not diagnostic criteria. It is part of research, and it really pretty much becomes a moot point, especially if you have fibromyalgia. You're not getting tested. And these specific things can turn up in the studies, but as I continued to dig, it didn't seem to be the most important part of the study. Okay, next. Very quickly, here's the definition of what a cytokine is. It's a category of signaling molecules that mediate and regulate immunity, inflammation, and hematopoiesis, and that's the production of blood cells. The next slide, I'll show the panel of cytokines. And if any of your spoonies are having any of these tested, please keep me posted. And also included is substance P, and we'll get into that right after. Before I get more into the article, I would just like to go back to the substance P and say that this too is done for research purposes only, and it's only the cerebral spinal fluid that they're measuring because regular blood labs are just not useful because the results are inconsistent whether a person is perfectly well or does have illness. Okay, so these, what you think you might be able to measure has now become a moot point for anybody with boots on the ground with this illness. Let's skip down to the last couple paragraphs of this article. And it's saying recent studies show that genetic factors may predispose individuals to a genetic susceptibility to fibromyalgia. And it even, they use the word may predispose. So it sounds very hypothetical. And, yes, there are genetic illnesses, and you could get into epigenetics and telomeres. Is study going on, but who's getting it done? Nobody. Unless there's something very specific they want to look for. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease might be an example, but that is like a separate genetic neuromuscular disorder, for example. Okay, for some, the onset of fibromyalgia is slow. However, in a large percent of patients, the onset is triggered by an illness or injury that causes trauma to the body. And the injury is absolutely true. Whiplash or some sort of head injury can cause damage, for example, to the pituitary gland. That's just the truth. And they actually list, the National Fibromyalgia Association actually lists whiplash as a cause, but they're not getting down to the nitty gritty. And also, I'm going to call it anecdotal because I'm no expert into this. But another example might be that someone became ill and they turn up with hypothyroidism caused by Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And, I am, although it's all above my pay grade, yes, people can find solutions, but not everybody so easily or with the expertise. So there again, if it is something like your thyroid, get your antibodies checked. Okay, these events may act to incite an undetected physiological problem already present. It may trigger the problem or unmask it. And that is, it's still not a solution or getting to the bottom of fibromyalgia, at least in my opinion. Okay, exciting new research has also begun in the areas of brain imaging and neurosurgery. Brain imaging, I could imagine, and I'm gonna, if you skip to the first paragraph, they're talking about the thalamus, which is a part of your brain, and the HPA-Axis and the hypothalamus pituitary are also in your brain. And imaging might unmask something. But when they talk about neurosurgery, who is having neurosurgery for fibromyalgia? Come on. I mean, you could be getting into spine surgery or brain surgery, such as a pituitary issue, but there's no citations in this article, so I don't know what that's about. We'll just leave it at that, but it seems like a stretch. And they're talking about ongoing research. Will test the hypotheses that fibromyalgia is caused by an interpretive defect in the central nervous system that brings about abnormal pain perception. Well, are they trying to say it's all in your head, or it was triggered by a traumatic event, post-traumatic stress disorder? I'm saying that wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say. What I'm getting at here is that, are they turning over every other leaf? These things can exist, But for millions of people, is it all in your head? Come on. Okay, medical researchers have just begun to untangle the truth about this life-altering disease. Oh, no, I mean, that's so sweet. Sorry about my cynicism there. Okay, I want to hop back up, and they're talking about low levels of blood flow to the thalamus. And again, that could be detected by imaging. But what are they doing about it? Is there any solution to this? And then they're talking about the hypofunction or the low functioning of the HPA-Axis. Okay, that's hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, and they work on a feedback loop system. These are all endocrine glands. They are mentioning endocrine issues. And there's actually studies that go back into the 90s where fibromyalgia were having a poor response in regard to cortisol. For example, a 24-hour urine was low overall, but their serums were normal. And, we'll see how much I actually get into these studies. But I really want to get to the punchline of what really may help you. The HPA-Axis hypofunction would be called adrenal insufficiency, and that could be caused from a pituitary problem or an adrenal problem. And it could be an issue. But what's lacking in this article are thyroid not working properly. And again, the pituitary, the adrenal, and the associated illnesses with it. So overall, these type of causes is pretty self-limiting to actually helping a person with the illness. And that's why I'm making these videos, and I'm going to include the studies because I really want to put my money where my mouth is that for people to turn over every single rock and not stop at an article like this. Okay, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.